So that's the black birch.
Very good.
Yeah, you don't swallow it.
No, I'm chewing it up.
Yeah, and it's a very, very delicious plant, and it cures bad breath. So I'm safe to go home to my wife, and so are you. Also, because it's an aspirin-like painkiller, I'm sure the Native Americans discovered this before I did, but I gave this to my daughter when she was teething. And then the medicine goes right to the pain because she's chewing on it. It tastes good, so babies love this. And the chewing also helps with the pain of teething. So anytime she was getting a new tooth, she would reach for this. Now she just says, black birch, black birch.
You ever prepare it like a tea?
Yeah, it's a very delicious tea.
You have to boil it a lot, yeah?
No, boiling it would drive off the flavor. It's delicate. You steep it. You put it in hot water like a tea bag and cover it and let it sit for 20 minutes. That makes the tea.
And I could probably find this in my backyard?
It grows in the woods where there's some sun and some shade. It's not the tallest tree in the woods, but if you come on some of my field walks, I'll show it to you, and you'll be finding you'll have a lifetime supply of it because it certainly grows in the woods in your area.
How do you identify it without the leaf?
Well, that's a little more difficult. First of all, the twig has sort of a smooth texture to it. Doesn't have a lot of cracks.
Yeah.
And it has these little white dashes on it. And the color is a bit of a reddish brown, a little like cherry bark, but cherry always winds up with lots of cracks in it. The leaves are going to be alternate. That means they're not in pairs. So you can see one bud here, nothing on the other side, another bud further down.
And those are edible also? The buds?
You chew on them. Yeah, you can chew on the whole thing. And if a lightning storm knocks down a black birch tree, then you could peel the bark and you could scrape off the green layer under the bark. That's called the cambium, and that tastes sort of like wintergreen candy. That's this layer. I wouldn't recommend anyone going and attacking a tree with a knife. It's not good for the tree. Yeah. But if the tree is already fallen, then this green cambium layer is quite delicious. And then the tree is also very good for the ecosystem. If you're trying to restore a damaged ecosystem, you plant this, it grows quickly, it attracts wildlife, and then they spread seeds, and you restore the environment very quickly. Now, I've got a video. We have a roll-in, so I'd like to take a break and roll the video and see what you think of it.
Okay.
Hi, I'm naturalist Wildman Steve Brill. I live in the greater New York area. I am a forager and an environmental educator. We are going to be doing a series on foraging, on wild foods, herbs, greens, berries, nuts, seeds, roots, and mushrooms that grow in urban and suburban as well as non-urban areas. Commercial plants are grown for their weight, so they have more water. Wild plants have more flavor and more nutrition because they're using these substances in their own metabolism. So this stuff is actually good for you. And when you go out into the natural environment and hunt for wild plants, you're learning more about your ecosystem. It's especially a good thing to share with kids who are basically locked up in a classroom or locked up with a TV set. When you go out and learn about your ecosystems, you become more concerned with protecting things right where you live as well as worldwide. So we're going to explore the world of foraging and see how this can benefit you and people close to you as well as benefiting the whole planet. There's lots of online and printed material about foraging. My website, wildmanstevebrill.com, is packed with information, and I've tried to make it a lot of fun too. Plus, there are links to all the other interesting foraging sites I've ever been able to find. My first book, Identifying and Harvesting Edible and Medicinal Plants in Wild and Not So Wild Places, published by William Morrow in 1994, is arranged by season and sub-arranged by habitat. So if you are looking for edible plants in mid-spring, you have the plants that grow in cultivated areas and thickets by the seashore, etc. And there are usually several illustrations of each plant as they change during the seasons. There are other foraging books. Some of them are written by botanists that wouldn't know what a kitchen was if one fell on their head, so you have to be careful about the information that has not been tested. There are also some excellent foraging books that don't really deal with holistic health, nutrition, or natural foods, where I think the health aspects of the cooking lead something to be desired. But every book has its good points. The more foraging books you have, the better off you'll be. There are also some straight botany books. This is the Newcomb Wildflower Guide, which I really like for identifying wildflowers, both edible or not. It has a key where you assign numbers to each plant depending on the number of petals, whether it's a vine, a shrub, or a flowering plant. And eventually the numbers will lead you somewhere, and then there's just a small number of plants to look through. There are also wildflower guides like the Peterson and Audubon guides, this being the Peterson guide, where you look at the color of the flower and the number of petals, umbrella-like clusters here, and use a pictorial method to get to your identification. The Peterson Trees and Shrubs Field Guide, although a little bit clumsy, also gives you a key where you get questions about a plant, and as you answer the questions, you get closer and closer to your target tree or shrub. After you've identified your edible plant with 100% certainty, you still need to know about some other safety considerations. First of all, don't pick anything within 50 feet of heavy traffic. If it's a side street with one car every half hour, that's fine. If it's the Long Island Expressway or the equivalent, it is not safe to eat. Also, don't pick anything in water that hasn't been tested. There are chemical contaminants and there are parasites that are in the water. Especially stay away from railroad rights of way. They spray there. And watch out for poison ivy, which we have right over here. This plant has a three-parted leaf, one part to the left, one part to the right, a leaf stalk, and one part straight ahead. It has an oil on it that will affect about 4 out of 5 people with a really bad rash. It grows along the ground as an herbaceous plant. It also grows as a vine on trees or as a short woody shrub. Poison oak is similar, but the leaves are more subdivided into lobes. This is all poison ivy. And poison sumac is a rare plant which grows in sandy swamps. Unless you're in a sandy swamp, that's not one you really have to worry about. If you do have contact with poison ivy, there's a plant called jewelweed that usually grows nearby in wet areas, which you see over here, and you squeeze the stem and rub the juice on the area where you've touched the poison ivy, and it will prevent you from getting a rash. This also works for mosquito bites, but we'll talk more about jewelweed later. Worst thing to do with poison ivy is to burn it, because if you breathe the smoke into your lungs, there's only one person in the world who's immune to that effect, and that's someone you all know very well. That is Bill Clinton, because he doesn't inhale.
I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
I'm standing underneath a black walnut tree, and you can take a good look at the bark here. It has these very large ridges, dark color, almost black, and deep grooves between the ridges, and some horizontal cracks between the ridges also. Quite a large tree, and it is Native American. It produces walnuts in the fall, October being the best month for them here in the Northeast. Obviously earlier in or later, depending on whether you're north or south of the New York City area. It produces walnuts that fall to the ground. We're going to take a look and collect the first ones of the season.